And good morning, and welcome to Gator's Garage, the home of all things historical gaming in and around the great city of Savannah, Georgia. We are having today our first panel interview, so this is going to be something new and different for all of us. Certainly, something first in the annals of our 24 issues of Gator's Garage. We have our returning friend, of course, Randy Yan, our
Hey,
sometime tournament champion and all the time bolt action aficionado. And we also have with us Bo Mortensen, which some of you may recognize. He's from across the pond. His name crops up every now and again on his own YouTube channel, and even with some other folks. I was watching, I think, the Fighting Kentuckian yesterday, and they referenced Bo Mortensen. I'm like, oh, he's so worthy. But no, Bo, thank you. We know it's a little late-ish. It's late in the afternoon there in England. Thanks for taking time to meet with us this morning. And just let's see. Tell us just a bit about yourself, Bo. Just a quick recap, and then we'll get into our discussions.
Well, I started out playing bold action, wanting to be the world champion, and I actually managed that last year, winning World Open War. So that was the 3-man World Championships. So I've lived out my bold action dream, and I'm a competitive bold action player. I run a YouTube channel called Bold Action Tutorials by Bo Mortensen, which has a lot of other stuff as well, but mainly is focused on competitive bold action. So I run analysis of tournaments and of lists and of games, and I try to release like raw footage of real games at tournaments. So that's what I do.
That is fantastic. That's great. I know we have videoed some of our tournaments. Facebook Live, I think we did a couple of those, and we got some good looks. Probably going to do some video at the one we have coming up in October. So we're being really bold and daring. We're going to do our first small tournament, October 12th. I've already sent out the TO's guidelines, and I'm kind of tamping things down a little bit. I've told folks, basic infantry platoon, light armor, light, no more than a couple of artillery pieces. Let's keep it simple. It's only 750 points. We're more interested in learning the game than just flat monkey stomping somebody, even with the hated Gurkhas. Cursed Gurkhas. That's what we'll start calling them. You guys ever watch Dune?
Yes.
The cursed Sardaukar? Randy runs the cursed Gurkhas.
damn Gurkhas.
Do what?
Damn Gurkhas.
Yeah. Damn Gurkhas. Yeah. We're just gonna start calling them that right across the board. So first thing I wanted to kind of touch on this morning, of course, the new rule books are coming out. People are getting them in their hands. Direct orders looks like they've gone out first. Randy's so hungry. Some of us got demo copy early with the caveat: you may talk, but you may show people in person, but you may not publish the whole book. It was like, well, gee, how can I? Why not? But anyway, so the books are coming. Pretty much all your stores should have them by next week, including Gator Games and Books. We're actually going to be handing them out at Huracan because that's when it drops. So be watching for that. If you've not ordered yet, you can still order it, still get it in time. I, of course, ordered extra because I know once people start to see it, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, I better put my hands on that. Hey, and while we're talking all things Gator, take a minute and do the YouTube things. Like, share, subscribe. Buy us a cup of coffee on the Ko-Fi or the Patreon because it takes lots and lots of coffee to keep the Gator awake and moving and doing all the videos. So there you go. So let's talk about HE versus buildings. That's kind of in line with kind of probably the next thing I know we're going to probably deal with in my club. Bo, what have you seen?
In case of version 3, I think it's a lot in line with what we've seen for version 2. So HE versus buildings is still going to be very, very deadly in version 3. The new thing is that when you shoot at buildings in version 3, you're going to have to shoot at an opening normally now. And for HE, you don't have to do that. You can just shoot at the wall. And because you're now rolling 4+ to hit, you're very, very likely to hit. I mean, even the guys inside, they can go down to half the hits, but they can't go down to make sure you don't hit. So you're extremely likely to hit. I think that houses and buildings are going to be a death trap
Yeah.
an absolute death trap in version 3.
Yeah,
And-
that was a big change because like you get a small team down in the building and it's like all of a sudden I can't hit the building.
Yep.
You know, maybe I'm hitting it with a heavy howitzer that does 3d6 hits and I just want to bring it down. Well, you can't do that because it's a small team inside.
Yeah.
If it's
And
empty,
that was a big
I can hit it.
effect, wasn't it? Because all of a sudden, that small team was actually protecting the building because you could shoot
Yeah.
at the building if there was no one in it. But with the small team, you have to shoot at the small team, and then you can't hit it, which was weird. But that all goes away in version 3. Now you just shoot the house, and whatever's in there is going to die. I guarantee it.
that sounds like a cleanup.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
Also because, like, in version 3, your minis can normally only be hit once. If you're being hit by HE, you can be hit once. So you take 1 damage per model, basically, right?
Yeah.
But in buildings, that's not so. Every model can be hit multiple times. So you're pretty likely to die from
Yeah.
HE in buildings.
You could have
Yeah.
one guy in there and he could get hit 12 times.
Yep. That's an actual thing. That could happen. Yeah.
And real world story, actually. When my dad was in Vietnam, he fired a 66 millimeter law rocket. Now he was aiming for the wall, but it went through one of the crenellations and went off inside the building, and that firefight was over.
That was
yeah.
done.
Yeah, it was done.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So
So real world, it also is like it is something that will stop anyone inside that building, right? We're seeing that all the time right now in Ukraine. As soon as something HE hits a building, that stops who's ever in there. That's
Right.
that's the end. So I guess it's fairly realistic. What I don't think is realistic and was always it sat wrong with me and did it in version 2 and is still going to sit wrong with me is the way that indirect fire hits buildings, where you roll for the top floor and then you roll for the second floor and then you roll for the first floor and then you roll for the ground floor. Oh, what's with that? Why is it hitting buildings like that? So indirect fire versus building is not a good idea, but direct HE, poof, they're dead.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, most of our buildings are going to be 1 or 2 level. So, a couple
mine as
shots
well.
from an indirect HE, those medium mortars become even more valuable. Yeah.
At
So
least
you
2
got,
levels,
that's got what, 2, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 levels. And you could even claim like a 3rd level on
For
in
the
roof
attic.
section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So HE in buildings. So, and it's really kind of funny because, I know, I don't know about you, Bo, but I cut my teeth on a game called Squad Leader, and vehicles were not that devastating against buildings in Squad Leader.
Yeah.
I feel, to your point, like in this case, I really feel like Warlord has gotten it right. That when you bring up there's a reason that we developed tanks and we developed infantry guns, and that is because, go ahead and dig in that building, and maybe my infantry can't dig you out, but I bring up that 7.5 centimeter infantry gun, or I bring up that Sherman, we're going to dig you out, and then you've got hard choices to make. Do you stay there, or do you bail out and fall back somewhere else? So yeah, that's going to be real interesting, and players are going to have to keep that in mind. I'm used to being able to hunker down in buildings. I think we got a rude awakening one time, Randy, when we were playing in Karen 10, and I think you dropped Artie on a couple of buildings, and everybody was like, "Holy cow!"
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were playing for that scenario. The bazookas did a 1-inch HE versus buildings. Of course, now
Right.
version 3, you get what 2-inch HE from a
2-inch
Yeah.
HE. Yeah.
Is it okay? I've heard of that. I've not looked it up. Now that's again, I think a significant improvement. And now is it both the bazooka and the Panzerschreck that are HE2?
Panzerschreck, bazookas, everything that has shape charge. So even a Piat now has 2-inch HE, and Panzerfausts as well.
Yeah.
Right. That's I really think, and of course the price has gone up on the Faust. I haven't looked at the price changes on the bazooka or the Shrek.
Yeah.
But the Faust
They're
has gone
pretty
up.
much the same as I remember them. I have looked them up a couple of times, and I don't think they changed that much. But the Faust has gone up in cost. Don't know why, but yeah. But it still has the shape charge, which means that you can actually shoot at buildings now.
Right. I think that's why. I think because it's gotten a lot more useful. Going from 5 to 15, I'm not sure. That does seem a little high. Still cheaper than a bazooka or a Shrek, so you can take several in a squad.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a reflection of the Panzerfaust force that guys like me usually run. They're probably looking to deal with that, but also this Panzerfaust now is good for more than just hunting tanks or soft skins. And honestly, based on other games, that's as it should be. So that's going to be again yet another way to dig somebody out of buildings. And now you have a reason to take Panzerfaust late war if you're Germans or Russians, especially if you think you're going to be fighting in any kind of building situation.
Yeah.
So that's looking forward to taking advantage of that. You're in trouble, Randy.
Yeah.
My Fallschirmjägers have lots of Fausts. We're going to Faust you up.
I don't think you're going to see 4 in a squad though anymore. I think you're probably going to see 1 or 2.
Maybe, yeah. Also, I think the price increase has something to do with the new shooting rules, because all of a sudden, Fausts are now pretty likely to hit, because most of the time you'll be hitting on a 5, because you'll have moved and then you shoot your Faust, because there's no long range anymore. So those Fausts are really going to hit a lot of vehicles most of the time. And I think the upgrade in points maybe reflects that as well. I'm not sure how they calculated the points, but at least that's my initial impression from having played, like we've played 6 or 7 games now of V3, and you hit quite a lot and at very long ranges. So yeah,
that's one of the critiques I'm seeing come out of the people just glancing at the rules, and even people playing, is that firepower now is king.
It is.
You're going to reach out and hit somebody way out there. Another debate, I know we're talking buildings, but weapons too. Another big debate is the BAR worth anything? And I saw a few people, because the BAR doesn't get it now gets a penalty for moving and shooting, and it doesn't count towards your rifle count, but it's still a 30-inch weapon.
It is.
So
the two fairly cheap. It's a lot cheaper than buying an LMG, for instance.
That's right. So if you what everybody's going to have to learn is watch those. Watching the long range engagement range is going to matter a lot more now.
It is.
The LMG and medium machine gun with ranges of 36 inches suddenly, and to be honest, suddenly become even more effective. Your rifles are 24 and 18. So if I've got a well-sighted machine gun, you've got to make 1 to 2 bounds before you can get in range. I'm going to get at least one shot against you, and maybe 2 as you're moving up.
At least
rolling 4 to 6 dice.
Yeah.
So so that's going to be really good.
You're going to be shooting at 36-inch range, and if you're at the edge of your deployment zone, 12 inches in or whatever, then you can move a little bit back and continue shooting. And if that guy is pushing up, you get quite a few rounds of shooting before he reaches you, and each round you're going to hit. You're going to hit every single time, which also touches on something that I am sort of mentally preparing for. I think we're going to have more terrain on our tables than we're used to, because I don't think this game works if you have a fairly bare table, because whoever brings the most guns then will win, and that's not fun, right? So if we're going to have a tactical game, we need more terrain. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I know we've looked at, Randy and I have looked at some tables when we've gone to tournaments and stuff, and it's pretty obvious these folks are used to playing other games, even other than bolt action. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
I've always, again, cutting my teeth with the John Hill rules. You look in Panzerblitz, Panzerleader, your terrain is about roughly every 1 movement bound away. Yeah. So if you translate that over to what we're doing here in bolt action, you're going to want terrain every 6 to 9 inches.
Yes.
So you can get caught in the open.
Closer to 6 than 9, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. 6 is 1 bound.
Yeah.
So that gives a player an opportunity to bound from cover to cover. Now, all that being said, not every battlefield is going to have that. If you're playing in the desert, I hate it for you. Now there it's up to the GM to have things like sand dunes, ridge lines that units can claim cover from, but it's much more exposed. If you're playing on the steppes, you're going to have just a lot more open ground to cover, and that kind of just is what it is. And again, if people know that with the scenario going in, honestly, that's when your AFVs become important because you can tuck your guys behind the AFV. So,
Yeah.
that's going to be things.
in it, because
Yeah.
armored fighting vehicles, especially like not trucks. It used to be trucks.
Right.
I
No.
used to run. Randy, you used to run trucks as well,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But
That's
I'm
good.
massively shifting over to anything that's got 7+ armor for all my transport needs. Because
Right. Well, I've always been a fan of mechanized cavalry.
C-15
So, what do you got
TA.
there, Randy? What is that?
That's a C-15 TA armored truck.
Right.
Holds 8
Okay.
guys. Yeah.
And it's armored.
It's armored.
Yeah. Yeah. I know one of our Italian players just picked up the Italian armored transport, which really looks dead sexy. So, it looks good. It's going to give them that 7+. Me, I generally run the Americans or the Germans. So I'm usually running, and again, I'm a huge fan of mechanized cavalry. So I've actually been building my Germans up to be more of a mech infantry. So I was already building, I think I've got 2 half tracks and a third on the workbench. So yeah. And now the half tracks are a lot more valuable.
Yeah.
And I want to say that they're a lot less. They're not auto captured because they're armed. I think that was changed, which is again favorable change. So that's we got into talking about weapons from HE and buildings, but that's where it comes in. Is again, I got my machine guns dug in a building, ideally dug in the upper part of a building, and dug in on ambush.
Yeah. So
right.
LMGs also, I used to run Chindits too, and Chindits get fire and maneuver with LMGs. Of course, they've lost that now. So, but what I would do with them is I would just retreat and shoot, and I would just stiff arm the enemy. They couldn't get within range, or they'd be shooting at long range if they're shooting at me. Yeah. And I just whittle them away as they try to come at me.
Yeah. One thing I will throw in there as well is when you're shooting HE at a building, whatever's in there doesn't get a cover save. So there are 2 situations in the new game where you don't get a cover save. One is if you're being shot at indirectly, then you don't get a cover save if you're hit. 2 is if you're in a building and you're shot at by HE, no cover save. You're just hit. And that is going to be massive as well, because it's the 2 ways that you have of actually cleaning out a unit completely, because otherwise you're always getting those cover saves. So you might take pins, you might take a few casualties, but you're not going to be completely wiped by a round of shooting most of the time. But in those 2 situations, that is deadly dangerous. So
if you're in terrain, if you're in terrain, you get a cover save versus HE.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
But in buildings, nope.
Wow.
Yeah, and so what they're capturing there is, of course, the whole. One of the things I read in a write-up talking about critical hits on buildings is they're assuming every time you get a hit on a building, it's somewhat critical. And what happens is whatever protection you were getting from that building now becomes a death trap.
Yeah.
Especially if that shell penetrates.
Yeah.
And it's going to bounce around inside there. Wow, that's amazing. So now, and again, we're starting to see people look at the HE autocannons. Again, those become much more useful, especially if you're going to be fighting in the city or fighting in any kind of built-up area where you can just dig people out. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So we get in. So here's the scenario. I put my machine gun position in a building. You pull up your Randy, what are you running these days that's got nasty machine guns? That darned M5 half track?
An M5? No. I mean, I was running Stewart's, but now I've got an LVT that'll probably still be decent.
Yeah.
All right. So you bring up your LVT and you just it's got heavies on it. So it's not artillery, so we need something with arty. So you pull up your Stewart because it can fire HE, right? So it's going to get that benefit against buildings as well as its machine gun fire, and you start digging me out. So I bring another squad up to assault your Stewart. So assaulting AFVs. Bo, what are you seeing on that?
Well, it works very much like version 2. That's right. What I'm seeing so far. And so you roll to hit, and if the vehicle hasn't moved, it's a 4+. If it has moved, it's a 6+. If it's run, you can't hit it. Yeah. So exactly like we've seen in version 2. And the number of hits plus a d6, that's your penetration. And if you don't have tank, what's that called?
Tank hunters.
Tank hunter?
Yeah. If you don't have that, you go straight and roll on the superficial damage table, which is now a whole table on its own, right? So, but if you do have tank hunters, you can actually kill that tank. One thing though is if you get an immobilized result on the superficial damage, the tank has to roll a test to see if it surrenders, because the crew now knows that they can't get away, so they might surrender, which is kind of cool. It's a nice little nifty thing, I think.
And happened.
It happened quite a lot. Yeah.
What about also on fire? If they fail their on fire test, they could.
Yeah. And there are now 2 chances, so you can get an on fire result or you can get an immobilized. Both of them require you to take a test. So
Interesting.
What about transports?
Transport is a lot more interesting as well for me. It was rare that I don't know how often you did it, Randy, but it was rare for me that I would assault a tank or whatever and kill it. I often just used it to move my Gurkhas further down the line. Like I would do an assault and then
tank them on assault
somewhere else, right? But vehicles, like transport vehicles, I would assault them all the time, as much as I can, and I'll do that still now. I think maybe if I can get assault to work. Trust. But the thing is, a transport now has to unload all the units it's transporting, not just one unit, all the units. So if you have multiple units inside, they're all going out. So it's a way to unload a transport and then shoot whatever was in there after that. Like charge it and then fight one unit and then shoot the rest. And now it's also much more realistic, that because in version 2 your unit could go out and could go anywhere, right? It could end up in terrain. It could even pull you into an ambush where you didn't want to go, because it could pull you to the side into the line of fire or something else going on over there. That cannot not happen anymore. Now you have to put down your your defenders, the people going out of the transport. You have to put them straight up against the transport, 1 inch gap, but as close to the transport as possible, and in the line of the assault.
Okay.
Which makes perfect sense, right? It's the way it always should have been played, I think. So you have to choose one unit that has to go out and defend your transport. It fights, like with the normal assault rules, and then the rest of the units, they can go other places, but they have to be in the line of assault. Which
does it have to be the largest unit now, or can it be any unit?
Oh, you're asking difficult questions. I think it can be any unit, but
sacrifice.
I can go and check if you really need, but then you need to talk about something else for a sec.
Yeah. So the other thing is, I think they fight simultaneous now instead of them just murdering you out in the open.
Yeah. But that happens to all assaults now, right?
So if you had a truck full of Gurkhas now, that's what you want. You want to fight simultaneous, and so they probably want to assault a truck full of Gurkhas. My guess.
No, that's what the Panzer Faust was for. Big roast Gurkha. Randy and his Gurkhas.
Yeah,
man.
but that too. So if you could pick the unit now instead of being the largest one, let's say I've got a troop of regular troops and I don't want them to get killed by some assault troops. I could send out my lieutenant and let him die, and then move my other guys out of the truck somewhere else.
Maybe.
Right. I've had time to look in the rules, because that's how quick it is. Now you have there's a list of where you go and find stuff. There's an index.
Yeah, go figure, right?
And it says the largest unit fights. So it is the largest unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Right.
All right. So we talked about what Randy wanted to talk about as far as HE versus buildings and close assaults against vehicles. Version 3 Gurkha strategy.
Yeah.
So it sounds like both you guys play damn Gurkhas.
Yeah. So I watched Scola Virginian play a game, and they had some Gurkhas in the truck, which is kind of the way I run them. I like to push them up. soft skin trucks. They just brought them on and set them at the edge of the table, and then got out of the truck. And I'm like, well, why'd they do that? But obviously, running a soft skin up is not going to really work because it's going to get shot, and you're going to lose guys. And so you're going to have armored vehicles. And so either like that C-15, which you can put 8-man squad in, or an LVT, where you can put maybe 2 10-man squads, because you're really going to want as many guys as you can get now, and then just push them at the enemy, and then get out. They'll take pins, but if they're full strength, they're going to get the re-roll getting out, and that'll work. Because if you try to just move up across the board, they're going to get shot to pieces. I saw that once those guys got out of their trucks, the one stayed put, and the other one, he tried to move up, and he just got shot to death, and he never got an assault in. But outflank is another way that Gurkhas might work, because now you can bring them in without them getting shot at. They can come in.
Right.
I don't know. Can they assault now from off the table edge, or is that still the same?
No, you cannot.
Okay. Yeah. So you'll have to make one move in, shoot, and then do that at the end of the turn, and then maybe the beginning of the next turn, you get the first dice and you make your assault. So that's kind of my thinking.
Speaking as an organizer and a scenario builder too, I think a lot of players forget about the outflank, because most other games, outflank is specified in the scenario rules. It's always been, or at least since version 2, it's been a uniqueness of bolt action that you can outflank unless the scenario tells you otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And there's quite a few of those scenarios where you can get that outflank in. And to your point, Randy, that's a great place to put your Gurkhas. That's a great place to put your light armor. Anything you want to bring slashing into the side and rear of your enemy. And also to keep your enemy kind of just a little off balance as to where you're coming in at and what might show up. Because I think it's got to come in by turn 3, right? It starts coming in at turn 3?
Start at 3.
Yeah.
Right. So they're fine till turn 3, but after that, they got to start looking around. And if they've advanced too far forward, then you can cut into the backside and start tearing up the backfield. And that's a great way to take out those pesky mortars, Randy, and then light artillery.
Well, and normally I would never outflank in version 2, because I want my guys doing stuff for the first 3 turns. But now with the shooting being as deadly as it is, maybe outflank is going to be more of a used strategy.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. I also think that they're like, I have ideas about how I want to play Gurkhas, or if I even do. But I think that there might be one way that Gurkhas were played in version 2 that we might see a resurgence in, depending on what happens once the Armies of Great Britain comes out.
Yeah.
Because that will change a lot, right? It'll change a lot. But we did see some players, and this was championed by a Scottish player called Graham. Hi, Graham. He would run Paragurkhas, 5-man Paragurkhas in Bren carriers. And he would load them up with SMGs. So he wouldn't use them as an assault unit like me and Randy would do in version 2. He would use them as sort of just something very nasty to have inside a Bren carrier. And then he would do an armored thrust, either from the outflank or just along one edge. And then move up with the Bren carrier, shoot 2 units, like split fire with the 2 LMGs, and then unload the Gurkhas and kill 1 unit with SMG fire. And because they were a veteran, they were very survivable. Because they were Gurkhas, you didn't want to charge them, so you had to try and shoot them off the board. And that was another way of trying to run Gurkhas. And he did so very successfully for a while. I am very much afraid that the Gurkhas are going to get shelved for me. I don't know yet. I'm going to try and make them work. But I think a lot of players who used to play Gurkhas and think, whoa, Gurkhas, I've seen Bo do that, or Randy do that, and they're just OP. I can just run them across the board and I'll win. That's not going to work.
No.
That is not going to work anymore. It never did, but it's definitely not going to work anymore. So I think some players, potentially, maybe I'm going to try, might make them work still, but maybe and it just changes to close combat. That is massively detrimental to close combat.
Yeah.
So,
maybe just bring 1 squad and use them as an outflanker, and then wreck their back line with it.
Maybe, but nearing the end of version 2, actually, I found that in many of the tournament games that I was using Gurkhas in, I didn't actually charge that much anymore. The charges sort of stopped. People were staying away from me, and that in itself was enough for me to win the games. So maybe I can sort of do something with that even in version 3, where people will stay away from me, and I can. But as to your point, Randy, we are going to lose a lot of veterans to long range fire, and that is going to happen no matter what we do, basically now. Yeah. So we need to find a way to get our Gurkhas to where they need to go. Yeah.
I think the armored transports both, and again, both the armored transport both as a transport, but also as a moving bullet shield, going to be important. That's harder to do. That's where your officer is going to be important, because if you got an officer transport in Gurkha, your officer can give a snap 2 and move both the transport and the Gurkha together, and kind of keep your cover. Although a KG player will still possibly have somebody on ambush to hammer you, but that can at least potentially reduce your exposure to fire till you get where you need to go. And again, and I think too, it's going to be up to the TOs to, make sure we have, terrain. Well, obviously, we don't want to build terrain that quote unquote favors the Gurkhas, the Japanese, or close combat armies. But you also don't want to build. You want to make terrain that's survivable. I mean, and to be honest, if you want to see what terrain should look like, just look at pictures. Pictures from the war. Northwest Europe, you're going to see a lot of hedges, even outside of the bocage. You're going to see a lot of trees, a lot of stands of woods, and God help you, you're going to see all these little tiny villages. So those are places where you're gonna have the terrain pretty close together. You go into Eastern Europe, you're going to have everything from the built-up city to, open plains. Although, again, if you're building an army to fight, and you're often going to know at least the terrain. Like when we publish, looking at a tournament side, when we publish our tournament list, we tell people what kind of tables we have. So it gives them the opportunity to kind of build to that. Obviously, if you're building a story-based scenario, then you're going to try and spec out the two forces, the two forces that are playing, and make them fit to the scenario at hand. So that's really good.
Yeah,
Randy,
but even like open tables, you at least would see contours of rolling hills, or even people digging trenches, right? So you would have places where you could sort of get cover. And I know it's difficult on our flat gaming surfaces, which we usually have, but I have seen some tables that are much more 3D, and that really works with open terrain. If you have it 3D, if you have like big pieces of XPS foam and you can carve into it and carve trench lines or carve rolling hills, then the game starts to work again with relatively open tables.
We use GeoHex, and I've got a couple of small one-off hills that I've used as line of sight breakers. And that's a great point. And Randy, that's where our GeoHex can come in real handy.
You mentioned snap 2, and I think I've seen them. You can snap 2 out of a vehicle now. Is that correct?
I think so too. I can't remember if I wrote it down in my notes. I think I did get my notes, because I don't want to look it up right now. But let me see. I think I'll look. Just a sec.
That's fine. So, what are you thinking about with a snap 2 out of a vehicle, Randy?
Well, so like you're protecting the lieutenant inside the armored vehicle, and you've got troops maybe following behind it or beside it, he can snap to. If you put a company commander in here, he can snap to 4 guys, and so you can really just mass firepower.
Right. Well, and the snap 2, I haven't seen it used a lot in V2. I saw it used occasionally, but I think in this case we're going to find it. Well, again, it's one of those things. I think folks get so caught up in the fire and maneuver that they don't think about, hey, I can snap 2, and now I can activate 2. Of course, I think it was like 1 with a lieutenant, so it wasn't great, but now it's 2. So, you activate that lieutenant and he activates 2 squads. You put 2 squads of firepower on anything, you're going to cause trouble. You're going to cause pain.
I just looked it up, and yes, you can now use all the abilities of an officer out of the vehicle. You just measure from the vehicle itself.
Wow, so a little more.
So
Yeah.
what you do there is us British players, we can buy a Bren carrier and stick your officer in it.
Well, how about an LVT?
Stick your
How
command
big
team
is
in
an
it.
LVT?
An LBT full of Gurkhas and an officer. Whoosh.
Oh lordy!
Oh,
Oh my gosh! Go get them, boys! Wow. So
Well, I'll just, before everyone runs out and buys LBTs, me and Randy both know that LBTs are really difficult to get to work. It takes a lot of practice.
They get
They
killed very
die
easily.
so easily. Yeah.
Yeah. It's literally a tin can going across the battlefield.
Yeah, it's a 7+, right? And it's
Yeah,
big.
there's no hiding it. It's going to be shot at. You can't really hide it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's a you know, I haven't ran any big transports for that very reason. Yeah, go ahead and load your 20 Gurkhas up in that LVT, and I'll come hunt it. You know, so yeah, I have seen I've seen people lose transports full of troops.
And here's a Crusader.
Yeah.
Just for size
comparison. They're big.
Yeah, they are really big.
Yeah, they're a rolling gun platform, and they're going to be a shot magnet, but they're armored. They'll last a little while unless somebody has something like, I don't know, 75 or even a 40 millimeter anti-tank gun. Any of your AT guns are going to give that thing a fit, and even some of your autocannons.
Yeah.
So
then
your
you're
LVT
just
doesn't
hoping
scare me, Randy.
for a cover save that will save your LVT, because any anti-tank gun will kill it.
Yeah.
And I've actually lost my LVT. I don't know about you, Randy, but I've lost my LVT mostly actually to medium mortars. Just
really
rolling a Lucky 6, landing on top of me down in the hole, and just poof, gone.
Yeah.
That's happened to me so many times.
I ran against a German list the other night, and he had a flak Zwilling 43.
Oh yeah.
Which was a heavy autocannon, 4 shots. So he put it on ambush, and he just guarded the road, and I needed to get up there, and so I had to just go, and he killed it.
Yuck. Now that's what, a quad 20, right?
No, it's 37 quad. It's a dual 37.
A dual heavy autocannon, so 4 shots at 3+.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Which
So dual 37.
A Steward in version 2. Yeah.
Even a medium tank, it will hurt a medium tank.
It will hurt him. Yeah, it will.
Yeah. That's
Just
pretty crazy. I love it.
The number of shots actually landing on you. In version 3, the flak Zwilling, oof.
A platoon of flak Zwillings, yeah.
Flak, again, with the new force structure, your flak guns become much more useful. You can take them in pairs, and again, everything's trade-off, but you got a pair of those flak guns, and then you got some infantry anti-tank. You can take care of a lot of business with that. So I'll have to think about that.
It's also 1-inch HE.
Yeah.
Right. Well. So infantry beware.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I want to buy a couple of those, the 20 millimeter AA guns, and roster them in with my Fallschirmjägers, just like I do in Flames of War.
I've already said on my channel, don't buy a couple, buy 3. Every time you buy something now, buy 3.
Buy 3. Okay.
Yeah, because that way you can feel the full platoon or battery. You're right.
The rule of 3 is now in effect for version 3, I think. Everything, you need 3 of everything. Yeah.
And buy them from Gator Games and Books, because we sell everything at discount. There's a commercial, only a little one. But yeah, we have seen people, looking to bulk up. For myself, I have to bulk up. Right now, my weapons platoon is a section consisting of my mortar and my medium machine gun for the Germans, and for the Americans, I don't even think I have a mortar put together yet. So I'm going to have to bulk up just for weapons, to say nothing of looking at some of the other things. Most of my armor is one of, so I'm going to need to add, I've got 1 Sherman, I'll need to add a second, which, I do a lot of the pre-printed. I sell a lot of the pre-printed stuff, so all I got to do is just paint it. Let's see if we get a picture here.
Your background is missing.
Camouflage.
There we go. It's camouflage. Anyway, there's a tank in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Or that's a
it's an invisible tank. Oh my God, yeah. Mike, you've cracked it. Finally, we have the invisible tank.
There we go. So yeah, but that's one advantage I have is I sell these pre-printed tanks, and they're all assembled. It's just finding time to throw a quick coat of paint on it. And please, everybody, paint your minis. I'm going to get on a soapbox here. I see a lot of people that will like base coat white, base coat gray. base coat green, base coat brown, guys. It makes it easier to paint, and if you do have to put them on the table before they're done, they at least look like something. So
In
that's
Europe, you can't even go to a tournament without 3 coats of paint
colors.
and a wash and a fully done base. That's the minimum
Really?
requirement to go to a tournament. I actually, because I run a lot of beginners tournaments, I call them rookie tournaments, and
Right.
I had to lower that bar just because I wanted new beginning players to be able to attend tournaments. So I was like, we don't need to have fully painted armies. You don't even need to be, what you see is what you get, WYSIWYG. Well, that'll go away. But once you get to the real tournaments, you're not going to get in unless you have a fully painted army, based, ready to go. That's it.
Yeah, it's something we've been struggling with in with some of our communities. Like, guys, get your stuff painted. Well, I want to do it, super artsy. Just get it painted.
Just get it
I
painted.
actually
That pile of shame is building up. Just get it painted.
right, and especially if you're running something simple like U.S., Russians, Japanese, even Germans. I mean, I guess if you're running Fallschirmjägers, those can be a bit of a challenge. Although I've been known to cheat and just go with the early war uniform, green and blue, and call it a day.
That's
there
the
you
way to
go.
Don't do P dot camo. Never do P dot.
No, you'll be there all day.
I tried to paint SAS
Ask me how I
troops,
know.
and they are a pain.
Yeah.
What?
The SAS troops, they're a pain to paint. Putting
Why are they camo?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is a pain. Yeah.
But even at that, if you were looking to play in a tournament, you could at least do skin weapons, throw a quick sand on the base, play, and then come back and finish your camo later.
Yeah.
I mean, there's options. But that's
they don't have to be finished, right?
Yeah. You mentioned.
Don't ask me how. Go ahead.
Buying threes. So when I first got into bolt action, I had the Band of Brothers kit, and didn't really know much about the game. And so I built 3 medium machine guns. I was like, oh, these are so cool. I'm going to use these. And then I found out they don't work, and they've been sitting on the shelf forever. So maybe now
you bring them out.
Yeah. And I will tell you,
to find those medium machine guns. I went out and bought myself a whole bunch of them just because I'm predicting that I'll need them for some of my armies.
So Warzone. You familiar with Warzone, right? Well, so John was the first time I went, he's gonna add that extra pin for medium machine guns, right? And he was allowing theaters. So I looked at the machine gun platoon, and I'm like, oh my God, I can take 16 machine guns. And he was like, no, you can't do that.
That's 32 pins a turn.
Machine guns for days.
So you were that guy, Randy. You were that guy that John was talking about that broke the system.
Randy has always been that guy when he wants to be really, really competitive. He's like, all right, how can I nerf the bejesus out of this? And that's okay. I mean, and that's where it's up to Bo, guys like me and you, to look at some of these tournament lists. And I've turned a couple back where I look at the list. I'm like, no, that's not where we want to go. I know for this first one that's coming up, I'm going to be really watching the cheese when people turn their lists in and saying, hey, I want you to keep it simple. I want you to keep it low level. We're not trying to run the table on anybody because everybody's had the rule book for about 2 weeks. Yeah. But I thought it'd be good for us to get an early tournament in. Yeah. So I think that'll be fantastic. That's what I'm hearing.
That's one of my pet peeves, that you have to be very clear in how you communicate to your players beforehand. Like, what is this tournament going to be like? Is it just us learning the rules? Is it us being ultra competitive? Is it us having a historical relaxed time? Is it even going to be a tournament, right? Because it doesn't have to be a tournament. It could just be a game day. Like, as long as you let people know in advance, they have a chance to sort of, find the right level. Yeah.
I know one of the most successful tournaments we had was a historical. We said, okay, it's going to be partners. And it was Axis versus Allies. And I think we had what, Randy, 14 people for that?
Yeah,
so we had a lot of players.
Yeah, we had a bunch.
Yeah, yep. And it was really cool because we could pair we got to pair some less experienced people up with more experienced. We got to keep with a historical theme, which looked, and I'll be honest, probably felt better for the players. So yeah that was good. We'll do that again. I think that's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, so we had 6 per side, and what we did is the first round, it was you paired two guys together on each team, and they played against two guys. And then round 2 and 3, we split off into I think individual matches. It was kind of a Ryder Cup, like the golf tournament Ryder Cup thing. At first, we played 2 versus 2, and then we went to individuals, and then all the tournament points went together to determine which side won.
And it was really fun. Everybody really seemed to have a good time. So we'll probably do that again in the same time period. We're building a cycle here where we're running tournaments about every 2 to 3 months, and then in between that, to your point, Bo, we'll run sometimes just either a warlord day or a bolt action day. I like to call it a warlord day and just tell our club, look, we're having a play day. Bring out whatever you want, but we may have me teaching bolt action, or Randy, or Patrick Ortiz, or I might be teaching black powder. I might be teaching Hail Caesar. But the big thing is that everybody just come out and play. That's the most important part. As John Russell says, come for the game, stay for the fellowship, right? So fantastic. All right, so we've answered it. We've talked a bit about buildings. We've talked about V3. We've talked about vehicles. And Randy, did you want to go over your Huracan list?
Yeah, I was going to put it out there and let y'all chew it over, and let's see if I can find it here.
And Bo, I've been trying to get Randy to learn how to use PowerPoint so he can actually put something pretty out there, as opposed to what are you going to put out anyways? Is this going to be one of your infamous handwritten lists?
No, this is actually Easy Army. So there it goes.
Okay.
You see
is
it
Easy Army doing full V3, and do they have it right?
We don't know yet. We have not heard from the guys running Easy Army, so we have no idea yet. But we're hoping, because it has clearly been the most successful piece of army building that we had.
And while we're talking about Easy Army and army building, you saw where Warlord has come out with the $2 a month app. What do y'all think about that?
I'd rather have Easy Army, just to be honest. But if I need to take it, I'll take it.
Right.
I don't like having a pay subscription thing.
If they did it where you paid one time, that might be different, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe
for ease, but I don't know. If they keep it updated, Easy Army sometimes is behind the curve a lot, but.
And really, people should buy the books, right?
Yeah.
I know we all use the apps, but they should buy the books.
I'm like you. I buy the books and then use the apps to build my armies.
Yeah.
But to your point, there are people out there that used Easy Army to build their armies, and they would use books they didn't have. And God love the Easy Army guys. They're all volunteer. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they got it wrong.
Yep.
And that's a little bit more work for the TO. So I guess your trade-off is ideally the Warlord app is official. Latest FAQs, latest updates. The Easy Army is a labor of love, very well maintained. I mean, God love these guys for doing this. Put stuff out in a good format, as you can see, but not always the most current, but certainly current enough to be useful. I mean, you can always. I've always found you could go to Easy Army and run off a basic platoon and go with it, and I don't see that ever changing.
And if you have the books, you can always we all knew that there was some issue units where there was something that was slightly off, or there was one unit that you could take an Easy Army but wasn't really allowed in that type of platoon. And as long as you had the books for reference, or had a friend who had the book, right, you could very easily check that. So yeah,
we actually had the opposite because. Go ahead.
I was just let's look at the list, Russell.
Sure.
List.
Yeah. So I'll let y'all.
Randy, you want to talk us through it?
Now this is for Huracan, so it's a V2, right?
Yeah, V2, 16 dice cap. So the dice cap really affected how I built this list. Obviously, I'd like to have had 18, maybe, or maybe even 19 dice. But
yes, lots of dice for Randy.
Yeah, you got to make full advantage of every dice that you have here. So what do y'all think?
So we have a inexperienced lieutenant. We've got 10-man Gurkha sections. I think they're overstrength, but you need to spend the points, right?
Yeah. I like the re-rolls to get them out of, because I put them in trucks, and it allows them to get out, even if they get pinned up.
Yeah. But you need big trucks, don't you?
Yeah, 10. So I take the 30 CWTs so that the 10-man fits inside the.
Yeah. 3 forward artillery observer with an extra man. Nice.
Sniper.
Of an Adam, because of course you do.
Yep.
Heavy mortar team with a spotter, medium artillery piece. Why not the 25-pounder?
Okay, so on the 25-pounder, it is for points for value, like we always talk about. It is the best artillery piece, but I have to spend the points, and for me, so for that AP shell, the tank's got to get within 24 for it to get better, and that rarely happens. So this one can actually hit a tank at 60 inches with a +3.
Yeah,
and it can wreck buildings. It'll keep people from jumping in buildings. A little more deadly.
And then the British Airborne Jeep.
Yeah.
God, I built so many of these, and I'm not going to use them in V3. I have like 4 or 5 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. The only good thing about them is they are ready. So if they get shot at where they might die, you just jump out of the way. But I still.
Yeah. And then a Stuart, of course, the Dhaka Stuart.
The infamous Dhaka Stuart.
Yep.
Last run of the Stuart.
Last run of the Stuart.
Stuart's
Use
last
them while
ride.
you can, boys. Use them while you can.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
the second platoon will be another inexperienced lieutenant or what?
I'm sorry.
And an 8-man Gurkha section, 2 8-man Gurkha sections, a sniper team. The Armadillo, we talked about that one, Randy. I agree with that because it has a heavy autocannon, right?
Yeah.
That heavy autocannon is very, very useful. And whoa, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, so
you jumped ahead on me because there's the second platoon. Okay.
And
Slides went all pulling. I'm sorry.
BTs and another Stuart. Yeah.
So the Armadillo, I've always had a little bit of trouble with it because maneuvering it, because you have to rear face it.
Yeah.
And once you're backwards, it's hard to maneuver because you can only go half speed and you can't turn. So I was like, wow, it's a 5. You hit really a 5 armor in the rear when it's facing backwards. Yeah. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to face it forward. And then when I want to fire, I'm just going to rotate 2 times and fire.
Yeah.
And I'll just pay the penalty for shooting.
Yeah. And you can move up and then rotate twice, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I can go up 12 and turn around, but with the range of the gun, you really don't need to move up much.
Yeah.
No.
An alternative, of course, could be to just shift it out with a Humber. It's a light autocannon, and you don't get the extra LMGs, but I really like this because it's armored. It is open top, so yeah, but you're used to playing with the LBT, so you know all about how to run open top vehicles. Has those 2 LMGs, 360, and the heavy autocannon, which is dangerous to all enemy Dhaka Stuarts as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. For me,
what I'll do is I'll probably keep my lieutenant next to it, so if it picks up a few pins, it'll help it. And speaking of lieutenants, if you notice, the headquarters is a support.
Yeah.
With the extra guy. So he's going to stay next to the artillery unit. And if they take a loss, I'm going to dump one of the guys off into the artillery to recrew it.
Yeah. Which is a nice little bonus, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think, Mike? What do you think about this list?
Looks like a Randy list.
I tried to keep it kind of basic.
Do what, sir?
I tried to keep it kind of basic, and Gurkhas, Stuarts, just
Gurkhas.
basic.
Gurkhas is basic, and I see your point. In this case, you had a lot of points to use over fewer dice, so piling in those veteran Gurkhas was definitely worth doing.
Yeah.
But Randy and I have a running disagreement on officers. I can't take an inexperienced officer. I'm usually going to take at least a regular, if not a veteran, because it makes them harder to kill.
Okay. That would be good for you in version 3, though. For me, I'm with Randy. But I think that also depends on your terrain meta. Like if you have relatively open terrain, then those officers are sniper bait, right? Yeah. But if you have at least standard Northern European tables, a lot of those have I think, more terrain than I'm seeing in some American tables. So the officers have always felt like me that it's a waste of points to throw extra at it, because I'm not using version 2. I'm not using officers for anything. Version 3, though, I'm using my officers way more. But version 2, I was only using them for maybe morale. So for that, I just want them as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
And I always use mine. I always use my officers as another maneuver element. So you'll see me equip my American officers with rifles if I can.
Yeah.
My German officers I usually equip with submachine guns, or I mean assault rifles. And but I don't run more than 2, because over that you lose that small team.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a little bit. That's probably one of our biggest disagreements on the officer layout. Great idea on the support officer. I'm actually going to be talking with when I talk with John Ross here in a couple hours. We're going to talk about taking full advantage of your headquarters, because there's a lot more to the headquarters section than just an officer, and I think a lot of us forget that.
Yes,
I'm with you on the armadillo.
The
intelligence officer might also be a good idea for your officer selection here. Yeah,
especially if you got Gurkhas, because in that you can pull the first dice out of the next turn and assault.
Yeah.
The support.
Sorry, we interrupted you, Mike. Sorry.
Oh,
it's all right. So I'm with Bo on the armadillo. I just don't like. I don't know why the British. They had this, and they had, I think, the Archer, which were both rear firing AFVs, and I'm like, well, and I think they had another one too. They have a truck mounted that they used in the desert that faced backward. That was on a portee and faced backward.
the long range desert group truck.
It was an 8th Army truck. LRDG used mostly Chevys, and they were pretty much all various calibers of machine guns for weapons. They were shoot and scoot. But I'm with Bo. I would take one of the British armored cars in place of that armadillo. The Humber's a good choice. I know I've got one built for my British force. I just tend to favor something that has a little better all around maneuverability. Obviously the trucks make sense.
Stackhounds.
Everything's. Now I noticed that you didn't buy, and I know there's been a big debate in version 2, I guess. No light machine guns.
No light machine guns.
And
huh?
They're bad. Version 2 bad.
Yeah, they're extremely bad. Version 3, though, they're going to be really, really crucial and really good.
I've heard people say that.
Can take 2 per squad now, whereas before I think they could only take 1 unless you were commandos.
Oh, what, the British?
Yeah.
The Gurkhas probably can, but I don't think the British infantry can take more than 1. No, we did see where they could take 2, didn't they? There was a
The Gurkhas they're 1.
I've always used, I guess being a purist, I've always used light machine guns, and I always like that reach out, even in version 1.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wasting points. I don't win as often as Randy does. But I win enough. My favorite is a Fallschirmjäger 5-man squad with 2 light machine guns. That is just a terror, because you're rolling out 10 dice at 36 inches, and you can tuck them into little tight spots and raise havoc.
Yeah, I heard an expression from South Africa. They call that type of unit, that type of army build, when you have a whole army of like doubles, LMGs, Germans, mostly that's Germans. They call it camping Germans, because they'll camp in their own deployment sector, just shoot everything.
Shoot.
It's exactly what I do with that little unit. I'll put him somewhere where he's got a good line of fire, and then my other guys are maneuvering on you and causing no end of mayhem. Especially if I've got enough points to
camping with the machine guns pointing all over.
Camping Germans, and of course, the way you beat that is you play a scenario where they have to maneuver.
Yeah,
looks good, Randy. I mean, I know you routinely turn in good results. I think you're going to do fine.
I think so too.
Only
IOCP really can't take that you have 10 Gurkhas in some units and 8 in other units. Why not 9 across the board? It's messes with my head.
You. Yes.
Yeah, so I thought about that, but like I say, I want to have the guys that are in the trucks, the reroll capability. So a lot of times I would even take the truck and just do a run order at the end of the turn,
Yeah.
straight at
Yes,
the enemy, and like dare them to shoot me, because then I know they're gonna take D6 hits. They may lose one guy, so they're still going to be in good shape. And then start next turn, I'm already doing what I want to do.
You're already running next turn. Yeah. I did that as well. Yeah, for a long time. That's why I've got like 4 30 CVTs in my collection right now. Not going to be used for V3, but I've got 4 30 CVTs and I've got 4 15 CVTs for smaller units.
Well, before you guys, ditch all your soft skins, just remember the soft skins still have a place, just like they do in real combat, and that is, they're going to be something you can use to bring your guys up on the first quarter of the board very quickly, get them behind cover and unload. Just like, there's a reason everybody in the world used motorized as well as mechanized infantry. Mechanized is preferred, and we all like that better. Armored vehicles, right? But, if you're short on points, which you still want to be mobile, the trucks still have a place, but you're going to have to use your cover very judiciously. And of course, they're not going to be able to move into cover, but they can certainly move up next to it. And I'd have to check the rules, but I think if you voluntarily withdraw a unit, that gives a die to your opponent, doesn't it?
It does. So don't do that.
Yeah.
So so tuck it behind somewhere where it's hard to hit, and again, to Randy's point, if you got this soft skin truck parked somewhere in your midfield or backfield, that's kind of teasing your opponent. And it's a barely, somebody in the back of their mind is thinking, man, if I could just get to that truck. Well, now you got a bait and switch going on. Say, come at me, bro.
Yeah. So like the wheeled vehicles, they move a lot faster than armored vehicles, tracks. So if you had a truck full of guys 11 inches away from the board edge and it gets pinned, and then you try to move it and it ends up retreating, you lose the truck.
That's dangerous. Yeah.
That's a fair point. It is absolutely fair to say that the soft skins have a lot more liabilities than they did in V2. But I think again, they're cheaper. And, if you just need some quick transport to get you from point A to point B, there might be something to look at. But I'm like you guys. I'm going to be looking.
Brings us back to what we were talking about earlier with the terrain. How much terrain do you have on the tables? If there is enough, then soft skin transports are absolutely worth it. If it's too open, they're going to get shot by Euro-camping Germans with their LMGs, and they're going to die turn 1.
Yeah.
Maybe there you go. All right.
With a bazooka team, a Jeep with a bazooka team might be useful.
Yeah.
Because you really want to, 12 inches, they jump out and they shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's going to be the interesting trade-off too. I know the British have their Bren carriers, which suddenly become a lot more attractive.
Yes.
And any Commonwealth army now is going to be looking hard at Bren carriers to at least to carry their small teams.
Yep.
And then I don't know that any other armies have anything quite like that, other than maybe the French. I think the French have a couple of small armored fighting transports.
Yeah,
and
especially those topped Berylets they have, which are really nice, 7+ and wheeled.
So, what do you think about that guy's Gurkha in Brins? Maybe that'll do pretty good in version 3.
Well, yeah, I think it may. It wasn't for me. I didn't like that playstyle, but I think it might actually work in version 3 as a valid playstyle if the Gurkhas are still a thing. We don't know because they're not in the rule book.
Well, now what is in there is an option, and to your point, and I don't know, you guys are the Gurkha players, not me, but just right off the bat, get my British here. I love that new book smell.
Yeah, it's great.
Randy, you'll get to experience that too. I promise.
Yeah. I think I'm going to spend about a day or two in my book once I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't blame you. I would spend more time if I didn't have. So I've got this going on. I'm doing version 2 of Musket and Tomahawk tonight for the club. And I'm also playing Blood and Valor. So I've been having to play catch up. All right. There's your vehicles and your infantry. So you got standards, you got paratroops, which are veteran.
Yep.
So I guess right now the best you could do would be veteran Gurkhas. What's the difference between veteran Gurkhas and Gurkha paratroops?
They
They're
get
stubborn.
stubborn on top of it, and they get access to a lot more machine guns in version 2, which
More
is my
machine
point.
guns, because
We don't know how they're going to turn out in version 3.
okay, yeah, because version 3, your Gurkhas in version 3 right now are basically they're veteran infantry, tough fighters, scary blighters. They can have one light machine gun. And the NCO can have a submachine gun and one other man.
Yeah.
So they've kind of dialed them back, if you will. Now the other way to go is special forces. They have all kinds of wild options there.
Yeah, you can build all your commandos and your SAS and all that from the special forces now in the rule books.
Yeah. So the SAS are a little bit cheaper now.
Yeah.
Not much, but just a little. I don't know if that's going to make them playable or not.
And what I'm really liking, and I didn't seem to notice this in certainly not in the version 2 rulebook in the initial release, but your option lists for both your infantry and your armor are much wider.
Yeah.
And I know that was one of the things they said is that when they dropped V3, it was going to be just the Big Five, but it was going to be a significantly expanded Big Five list, bringing in some of the stuff that was in the armies of books. I've had a lot of minor players, Finns, Hungarians, be like, "Oh my gosh, I hope my PDF's going to be useful," and I can encourage them that if the minor nations PDFs are at all the way the upgraded lists are in version 3, I think the minor nations are going to be very pleased with the way the PDFs come out. I am hoping for the Italian players that they use more of the case blue Italians than the med Italians. Those case blue Italians are nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah,
they're a solid force.
Yeah.
So, all right, I think we have covered all our objectives, gentlemen. Randy, I want to thank you for your time always. This is normally Bo, me, and Randy do a show about once a month. Go ahead, Randy. What's that?
No, I was just saying thanks for both of you guys for being here, having me on.
Absolutely.
And thank you guys for having me on.
And Bo, I think to be honest, I think I'd like to have you on again in about 3 months or so, just to kind of get how you feel about version 3. I do like to. One of the goals of the channel is an ongoing conversation certainly about bolt action, but all elements of the hobby. So
let's talk again. Then.
I think so. I think we have a lot to talk about. And folks, thank you so much for your time. I hope you picked up some things useful. I know I have, and I'm looking forward to seeing Randy here in what you're going to be at Huracan, right, Randy?
Yeah, I'll be at Huracan. Yeah, so hopefully you'll have my book when I get there.
I will have your book.
Good luck, Randy.
Yeah. And then I'm really looking forward to seeing you at Huracan. I don't know, Bo, maybe we can drag you over to this side of the pond sometime. I got a bedroom in Savannah.
It's still on my to-do list to go at least maybe to Warzone Atlanta one time and
yeah, maybe Warzone.
Yeah, that's worth the trip.
That'd be great.
Yeah, John puts on a good list. Again, folks, this has been Gator's Garage, and just a reminder: like, click, share all the YouTube things. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe and take a look in the links below. We will have a link to Bo's channel down there, a link to Gator's Games and Books if you want to help support the videos, as well as our Patreon and our Ko-Fi links if you want to buy us a cup of coffee. With all that being said, this is Gator's Garage in Savannah, and y'all have a good day.